over at BangTheBook.com. We are your one-stop shop for sports betting news and information. Lots of great work being done by our talented cast of writers. I'll lump myself in that group here as well. My college football power ratings went up on Monday. Situational article for week 1. My top 3 season win total over bets and season win total under bets posted over there as well. On the NFL side, we've got a couple of preseason previews for this week. We'll get some more from one of our affiliate partners in Charles J. We've also got Danny Vorgs' division-by-division breakdowns of the NFL, of the season win totals, his projected lines for every game this season. Danny, 58% lifetime on sides and totals for us over at BangTheBook.com, so that's great to check out. James Mazzolo with a Tour Championship preview for that FedEx Cup Playoffs Championship event. He's hit back-to-back outright winners the last 2 weeks and crushed it on his matchups as well. So make sure you go over there to BangTheBook.com and read that piece. No NASCAR this weekend, but we do have Xfinity Series. Once odds are out for that, I'll give you a preview. No UFC this week, but we will have Christian Pina on Friday's show talking some Major League Baseball and some college football with us, so you can look forward to that. We cover it all over there at the website, WNBA, soccer, tennis, golf, UFC, and, of course, all 6 major sports, NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college football, and college basketball at BangTheBook.com. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook, 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. 2 guests join me here on the program today. We start things off with Bang the Book writer Aram Tolegian. We're going to chat some college football and some NFL with him. Aram, how's it going today, man?
Very well, Adam. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm just like the rest of us, probably on vapors right now, waiting for football season to start. It's been a long off season.
Yeah, it really has. And you've done some fine off-season work for us here over at BangTheBook.com, making your debut here over the summer and then writing some very good stuff on college football and the NFL. And, of course, we're not that far away from the start of college football. And let's go ahead and take a look here at, I guess we'll piss off some fan bases before we make some fan bases like us here on this Wednesday show. You wrote a very interesting piece earlier on this month about 3 teams that you find to be overrated for the college football season. Before we specifically discuss those teams, it's worth pointing out that all 3 of them are very, very big brand names, blue blood types of programs. Is that by design?
Yes, it is. And yeah, to further your observation there, they are the number 3, 4, and 5 teams in the country. So yeah, we're taking on the big dogs, so to speak. And yes, it is by design. As is stated in the article, what we're looking for here is teams that had a season total wins line of 7 or more. So, we wanted to be dealing with the upper echelon. I mean, it's hard to say, that a team that's, Washington State, well, they're overrated this year. Okay, big deal. Let's talk seriously overrated. And the higher rated you are, the more overrated you could be. And this is exactly the situation with these 3 teams.
Well, a pretty good cross-section of the country here. And again, talking about blue blood programs specifically. And the first one that you list here, I think this one may catch some people by surprise a little bit because they are the consensus number 2 team in the SEC behind Alabama this season. That's the Georgia Bulldogs. What is it that you don't like about Georgia?
Okay, where to start? First of all, if anyone's going to tell me that this team is better than last year's or equal to last year's, I'll just laugh them right out of the conversation. I don't see that at all. Yes, there are some important returning starters. Jake Fromm at quarterback, that's fantastic. I'm not sure how much more upside from what we've seen he has. So I think, he's a what you see is what you get guy so far. But beyond that, a lot of the talent that they were expecting to contribute, or I shouldn't say a lot, but some of it is now gone. Very highly rated linebacker, Brenton Cox, left the program. He's now at Florida. Wide receiver Jeremiah Holloman, one of the projected starters by many people, left the program. I think he transferred to FIU or FAU. Holyfield, the running back last year, he's obviously gone now, so that 1-2 punch that they had last year with DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield is now just a one punch. Their best defensive player from last year, DeAndre Baker, declared for the NFL draft. I just don't see this team, and what they're getting right now is everyone's basically blanket ranking at number 3, and I just don't see this team as the number 3 team in the country. They could be one of about 10 that I see that could be the number 3 team in the country, but they're a consensus pick as the number 3 team in the country. One of the only few that can threaten, Alabama or Clemson in a lot of people's minds, and I just don't see it. We go back to the end of last year. Again, this is a team that lost its last 2 games: SEC title game against Bama, Sugar Bowl against Texas. The last 2 times they've played Bama, one for the national title, one for the SEC title game. I think that's what people are stuck on, is they thought, well, they were a hard luck loser in those games, and they were. They had leads, they couldn't keep them, and they blew games. But there's no reason to say that's that they're at that level again until they actually prove that they are, and I just don't think they are. Now, do you want me to talk about their schedule?
Well, I mean, here's the thing that I want to touch on here first is, when you look at a team like Georgia here, this isn't saying that Georgia is going to all of a sudden go 8-4 in the regular season or something like that, or maybe even go 9-3. But it's simply to say that, again, when you talk about overrated and underrated in the context of our business, you're looking at teams that you can make money going on or against. So this is one of those cases where perception and reality may be a little bit different with Georgia, in the sense that, yes, they're still very good, but will they continue covering all these numbers as a double-digit favorite? That remains to be seen. So, yeah, I think that kind of parlays itself into the schedule and, maybe some opportunities to go against this team from a betting standpoint.
Right. And to your point, what we're looking at here specifically when we make these calls before the season are some enticing things as far as their futures. You can get them under 10.5 wins. They are priced nearly to perfection. It's not quite Clemson or Alabama level where they're playing 12 games and the total is 11 or 11.5 and 1 loss and you're done. You will need more than 1 loss here for Georgia to blow that type of total. Also, betting them not to make the playoff. That's another thing I think that offers value here. If you look recently, in recent years, kind of since they've gone to the playoff format, for whatever reasons, these teams, a lot of them that were ranked in that 3, 4, 5 range to start the season, a lot of them tank. I mean, think back to Florida State and USC 2 years ago. I mean, those are teams that they won like 5 games or 6, 7 games. I mean, it just they tanked. And I think Georgia, could fall into that category. I'm just not, every year is different, and we got to, base these teams and how we feel about them on how they are coming into this year, and not based on what they did last year or 2 years ago, close calls against, Alabamas of the world. And with this team, I just don't see it as loaded as the previous 2.
Well, and of course, playing that SEC level schedule, you get a Tennessee team that should be improved with another year under Jeremy Pruitt, better talent there for them. Auburn, last year was kind of a down season for them. They should pick back up. Florida, we'll get a look at them on Saturday, but a lot of people high on the Gators for this year. Texas A&M, and even South Carolina, who, Will Muschamp may have his best team in Columbia yet. Projections for that team very, very low because of the brutal schedule that they play. That's not exactly a gimme game for Georgia either when they take on the Gamecocks. So some good thoughts there on Georgia. And let's move on here to one that, look, I mean, obviously for me as an Ohio State fan, I don't like to hear this, but I can definitely understand why people are a little bit low on the Buckeyes. Why are you low on the Buckeyes? Aram, you still there with us, buddy? All right. Seems like maybe we lost Aram. Oh, whoops. Well, I just ended up cutting him off there. We'll get him to call back in. I apologize for that. Obviously, this is, what happens sometimes when we live record this show. Sometimes we have some things that kind of go wrong a little bit. I promise you that will not be the last time that we have some sort of hiccup here during the program. But in any event, we'll get Aram to join us here once again. Aram, sorry about that, buddy. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I don't know either. But we were talking about Ohio State, and what I wanted to say was, you were asking for reasoning and why they make the list of the three most overrated. And the answer, in short, is that it's multifold. You don't lose a quarterback like Dwayne Haskins, a first-round NFL draft pick, and a coach like Urban Meyer, who's one of the best of all time, and get better. Not only that, I don't even think you stay the same. You combine that with a couple of different things here. Ohio State, to me, last year seemed like a team that was just basically hanging by a thread. And by that I mean, this is a team that had a 1-point win over Penn State. You remember that great, crazy fourth quarter, that late, win for them that could have gone either way. A lot of people felt, Penn State kind of bricked that game. Ohio State pulled it out. 5-point win over Nebraska. The overtime win, another 1-point win at Maryland. That could have gone either way. They go into the Michigan game at home, and everyone's thinking, okay, this is finally the time that Harbaugh gets by these guys. Well, Ohio State comes up with a huge game, as they've often did under Meyer. They pull it out, get to the Rose Bowl, hang on to win that game. They don't cover, though. And to me, it was just a team that was hanging by a thread, and the main reason for that was its defense. Now, defensively, I think they might be better, but my problem is offensively, quarterback is a huge question for me. As people who follow me on Twitter know, I'm extremely skeptical of Justin Fields. I just don't think this guy can pass. And Ryan Day's passing game is sort of an intricate passing game. It was something that Haskins was able to handle with great success, but Fields is nowhere near ready to do the type of things that Haskins did. And these are, reads. These are getting the ball deep, letting routes develop. He's nowhere ready for that. We saw at Georgia, he was basically a scripted quarterback, meaning when they put him in, it was scripted plays. Most of them were keeps. The games where he actually did complete some passes were against really, really awful teams. And then, the spring game Ohio State had, if you look, there's a video out there on YouTube where you can see this guy's spring game highlights. They're all runs. Okay? So Ohio State is going to undoubtedly, just like last year, be in games where somebody needs to throw them to a win. And I don't think Justin Fields can do that. And again, what we're doing is basing these things on perception and price. The way Ohio State is priced, 10 wins, they got to win 11 to beat you as far as, the futures go. I don't see that happening. This is not an 11-win team, not against that schedule, which we didn't even talk about yet. And also, I don't see them making the playoffs. So I like both of those plays there, under 10 wins, and also not to make the playoffs.
Yeah, the schedule is not easy. I mean, they're in the harder division of the two in the Big Ten, and not only that, but the Big Ten West is improving as well. So the Buckeyes definitely
vastly.
With a tough road. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the only gimme game in this conference, the only gimme games in this conference as far as I'm concerned, Rutgers and Illinois. And even Illinois is getting a little bit better, got a little bit of season win total love for the Illini line. So, hey, for the Buckeyes here, could definitely be a little bit of a step back. One more overrated team to touch on here, and this is another one maybe following the same theme as Ohio State, where maybe we've got some quarterback questions here. That's the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yes, it is. Oklahoma has the same issue here, at least in my mind, and that's quarterback. Everybody knows Jalen Hurts. They know the situation. He's a guy that had some success at Alabama, but ultimately lost his job. And you can just let Nick Saban be your guide here for this. And the fact is that Saban did not trust this guy to be a passer. He didn't think he could win the national title game when things started going bad over Georgia. And what he did was he went to Tua. He took Hurts out of that game. That should tell you something right there. And then obviously they have the offseason battle last year, and Hurts has every chance to win the job back, and he can't do it. And Tua's the guy. And obviously Tua's a heck of a talent. Hurts goes, on his way to find another situation or a better situation. But, Adam, I thought that Jalen Hurts would have been better off going to maybe an offensive system like UCLA's where, it wasn't so heavily relying on the pass, and he could use his legs for a lot of things. And that's really not the case here. I mean, you've seen the last two Oklahoma quarterbacks have won Heisman trophies. This is a passing offense. Yes, the QBs, if they're mobile, and both of those two guys they were able to move around and make things happen. But the problem is when Kyler Murray moves around and makes things happen, and Baker Mayfield moves around and makes things happen, they make it happen downfield. Jalen Hurts has not shown that he could do that. And you're also getting another sign out of this that it took so long just to name the guy the starting quarterback. So as I asked in the article on the website, does Lincoln Riley tailor the offense to Jalen Hurts, or does Jalen Hurts have to somehow fit himself into the offense? Either way, it's not going to be the same thing that it was the last 2 years, and I think people are just hearing the big name Jalen Hurts, and they're thinking Oklahoma won't miss a beat, and that's just not the case.
Well, what I'm really curious about here is how are you going to play this? Because with Oklahoma getting Alex Grinch as the defensive coordinator, I think it's a home run hire for them. The defense should get better, and the defense has been a problem for this team. So the defense gets better, but maybe the offense doesn't with Hurts. Are you looking to go against Oklahoma? Are you maybe considering actually stepping in front of an under with them? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so few things here, and it's a great question because, like I had mentioned, before on the website, sometimes we get these teams and we find, great situations that we think we've got a team that we can go against, and then we look at their schedule and we're like, crap, this is just not conducive, to going under, or really stepping in on an under, season total wins or whatever it might be, because you look at the schedule and you're just like, man, I can't find the losses. Now, there's two schools of thoughts on this. One, you can pass altogether if that's the case. Two, and this is one that I found, and it kind of runs with how the gambling gods work, is that if you do pass, one way or another, the losses do come, and you just got to trust that when you see a schedule and you just say, well, I just don't see where, they lose two games here. You sometimes just have to close your eyes and just let it happen. Now, obviously, they play Texas on a neutral, and they could easily lose that game. They play at UCLA. I think that's a very dangerous spot in September. I think even Houston, coming up here in another couple weeks could be interesting. You just got to trust that they'll find the spot, the losses that you need to make this thing work. What I would do is this: is for maybe half your usual bet, play them under 10.5 wins, because the schedule, isn't jumping out at us as saying, well, hey, there's multiple losses that we could see happening here, but we got to have something on it. The other way to go, and I mentioned this in the article, is anytime this team is a favorite of 1 to 14 points, a competitively priced game, let's bet against them. I don't know for sure what games yet will qualify as far as that. I got to think the UCLA game will. Maybe Bedlam at the end of the year at Oklahoma State will. Maybe even Texas, they're a small favorite. I think if you find them in that, I guess you would say 14 points or less is a short favorite range these days in college football. If you find them in that range, I think you're going to make money at the end of the year betting against them in those spots.
Yeah, I'm taking a quick look here because I've got a spreadsheet up in my power ratings article and also in my top season win totals articles about some of the lines are going to be out there, at least projected based on my power ratings. I have them minus 11.5 at UCLA, minus 6.5 against Texas, minus 9.5 at Baylor, then minus 10.5 on the road at Oklahoma State. So those would be 4 situations, at least according to my preseason numbers, that would fall into that range that you're looking at. But Aram, let's fill the glass up about halfway here instead of looking at it as being half empty. The underrated teams, and I really like this list, and these are not your household blue blood types of programs, although one of them hoping to get back to that sort of level. But let's look at the underrated teams here, and you've got a couple teams that play in some pretty high altitude that you're looking at. We'll start with BYU.
Right, and before I talk about BYU here for a second, like I said before, in the article here, there's more money to be made on the overrated list than I think there is on the underrated list. I think you're just going to have to let some things develop with these underrated teams and look for the right spots to play them. Okay, so BYU up first. I think this is the best BYU team in several years, and I think that for a couple of reasons. Quarterback play has been missing, and I know it's strange to hear BYU and lack of quarterback play in the same sentence, but they've been bad at that position. They've also had a bad sort of offensive strategy. A lot of that had to do with Ty Detmer and the head coach Sataki wanting to be this power ground running team and all this stuff, and it just didn't jive. It's not how the game's played really anymore. It also made no sense to me how Ty Detmer could be such a conservative run on first down, run on second down, throw on third down guy, when he was the kind of quarterback and the player that he was back in the day, but such was the case. Well, he's gone now. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have decided that they will open things up more, and they can do that because they have a true sophomore quarterback in Zach Wilson who actually can throw. And that's something that's been missing. He's got a decent set of receivers. They have good talent on defense. I like this team. Now, the trouble here is that, the schedule is just insane. You start with Utah, at Tennessee, USC, Washington. Those are the first 4 games. It lightens up later in the year, so that's nice. And that's probably when exactly they need it. So I'm not sure how you would handle, any sort of futures props on them. But I do know that as a road underdog, that's the key thing. When nobody's looking, that's when BYU has been known to jump up and bite people. As a road underdog, they're 20-8 against the spread the last 10 years. And, if you think back to that, last year they're +10 at Arizona, they win the game outright. +22 at Wisconsin, they win the game outright. This team tends to jump up and bite you when you least expect it. Now, conversely, they're not a very good favorite. So what we're going to do is just look for spots where they are a road underdog and hopefully rock some teams. So, like, if they lay an A against Utah to start the season, which I think might be a competitive game, the following week they're at Tennessee. We should be getting a good amount of points there. So if you're looking to bet BYU against Tennessee, you're hoping that they fall flat against Utah and we're catching 10, 11, 12 points when they play Tennessee the next week.
Well, one of the nice things about that, it is a challenging situational spot going out to Knoxville after the Holy War, but the Holy War game Thursday night, so they have a couple of extra days to sort of get back on track and then also make their way out to Tennessee. So, could be a really interesting line there as well in week 2 for that Tennessee game. I mentioned you've got a couple of teams in high altitude that you like. One of them, a major conference team here, the Colorado Buffaloes. And I know you and I have a little bit of a difference of opinion on this one, so I want to hear your thoughts on Colorado.
Yeah, Adam, I really like this team. I really like this bet, and that's not like me to use a team that to use any team basically going over their season win total. I don't like to do that. Obviously everything can go wrong and nothing can go right when you're playing an over, right? But when you're playing an under, only good things can happen to you. They still got to go out and win the games, injuries, attrition, whatever can happen, and it's all beneficial. But I make an exception here because I really like this team. Now, their over-under for the season is set at 4. And let's just look at this, okay? Last year, this was a team that started off 5-0. Then they suffered some injuries. Later in the year, they lost their best player, this receiver, Laviska Shenault, who I think everybody kind of knows now. I mean, this guy is a next-level NFL guy, probably a first-round pick, assuming he stays healthy. They lost him. It was a lame duck coach situation. They lose their last 7 games of the season, and I think that's what everyone's remembering. But at full strength, and this is not a program with a lot of depth, but at full strength, and Shenault will be back, quarterback will be back, Steven Montez, who, I'm not in love with. I think we've seen the ceiling on him, but he's good enough to get the job done, and they have some talent elsewhere, including Chenault's younger brother, who's a freshman and supposed to be a stud himself. This team, if you look at it, the teams that they beat last year, Colorado State, Nebraska, UCLA, Arizona State, and New Hampshire. UCLA, I think their season win total is priced at 6.5 in there. Arizona State in the 7.5 range. Nebraska in the 8.5 range. These are all teams that Colorado beat last year, and Colorado's sitting here at a 4. And I can make the case that they'll be better on offense and better on defense simply because the new head coach, Mel Tucker, is a defensive guy. He's going to bring a new energy. There's going to be a new energy, and there is a new energy in the program as a whole. Offensively, they've decided to use this. They are really going to go up tempo. I mean, basically is the way to put it. I mean, I'm talking like very, very little time between plays. They are really, really going to go high speed, and they have the talent to do it. And on top of that, I want to give you a name, a running back. He's from your part of the country, Midwest guy, Jaron Mangum. He's a true freshman out of Detroit. He was one of the better running back recruits in the country last year. The guy tore it up in their spring game and in their scrimmage, not their spring, their scrimmage that most recently happened. This guy's no joke. He's a 6'2" running back, over 200 pounds. I think he's going to be, if he's not starting to start the season, he's going to be splitting time. And if he's not starting by week 2 or 3, I'd be stunned. This guy's no joke. He shunned Michigan State to go to Colorado. He stuck around after they fired McIntyre. This offense is absolutely loaded. And if you look at their schedule to start the season, I think they could get the 4 that you need just to be in the push range before September's even over. They play Colorado State. They're a double-digit favorite there. They play Nebraska, who they beat last year, and now they have Nebraska, and they won that game in Lincoln, so now they're at home against Nebraska. They're at home against Air Force, and they'll be a double-digit favorite there. That could be, if they beat Nebraska, they could be 3-0 or worst case 2-1, and then they play Arizona State, and that's a toss-up game to me at Arizona State. That's kind of the swing game on the schedule. They're able to win that. They're able to upset Nebraska, which I think they're going to be live in that game. You could be at 4 right there. So, again, like I said, these teams, comparatively that have higher win totals, I mean, they are priced 2-3 games below teams that they beat last year, and they're just as good as they were last year, maybe even better.
One more team I want to touch on here, and this one also in the Pac-12 that you think has some value, and that's the UCLA Bruins. And, I think it's interesting to sort of look at this scenario with Chip Kelly in year 2 and wonder if maybe this is the time that everybody starts to catch on, and it seems like that's kind of what you're looking at to be the case here out in L.A.
Yeah, everyone in the program, you mean, and specifically the offense as far as getting used to the system, that's what you mean?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, right. Okay, yeah. I didn't know if you meant like the betting public's catching on because I don't think they have quite yet. But yes, I agree. Year 2 of Chip Kelly, especially for the quarterback who was a true freshman playing last year, this Dorian, they call him DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The guy showed flashes of being an absolute star in high school, and this offense is tailor-made for him. So that whole offseason now, of maturity and working with Kelly is going to be huge. They have a stud running back in Joshua Kelly. Long story short with this team, Adam, is talent-wise, I don't think they're quite there yet. In fact, I know they're not there yet across the board. But they have 2, 3, 4 guys on each side of the ball that are just as good as anything you'd see anywhere else in the country. And you combine that with now, being more familiar with the system. I like this team. But again, this is like Oklahoma in reverse for us. We're not going to go over their season win total against that schedule. I think most people agree that's one of the top 10 or so toughest schedules in the country. But situationally, specifically when they're an underdog, I think they're a good play.
Now, when we look at UCLA here and we look at, Jim Moore really screwed the pooch with this team. He recruited relatively well early on, just didn't really maximize the talent that he had. And that's really the question here is, can Chip Kelly maximize the most out of this team? And, hey, if you want to look to play on them as an underdog, maybe there are some upsets coming that, could really change the dynamic of this program, not just for the rest of this season, but next year as well.
Right. And we're going to get chances for that, obviously. I mean, just look at week 1 at Cincinnati. They're about a 3-point underdog there. We talked about the Oklahoma game coming up in mid-September. There'll be a home underdog there. That might be the first time we get to see if Jalen Hurts can throw Oklahoma back into a game on the road. So that'll be interesting. I see a lot of spots actually where they will be an underdog. So again, I'm not gonna mess with that season win total and project them to do wild, great things. But I think we'll be cashing tickets if we play them the right way situationally.
Good stuff on today's show from a Bang the Book Radio first-timer here in Aram Tolegian. You can follow him on Twitter at ChemicalAT. Aram, anything in the pipeline that you got coming up that you're going to publish for us here in the near future? Yeah,
I think what we're going to do is I'm keeping track of this, switching speeds to the NFL now. And we'll probably need another, week, more of data to help us with this is how the NFL preseason is causing adjustments in the market. So far, correct me if I'm wrong, there hasn't been, really any crazy injury situations other than maybe Andrew Luck, maybe Colt McCoy, if you want to call that major. Luck is more of a mystery at this point. We don't even know what's wrong with him. But I want to see, how what these teams are doing in the preseason, how that's affecting any sort of futures or even week 1 spreads. So that would be probably what's next up. I don't really know if there's anything else we can do in college before these games actually start. I think we've beaten that one up quite a bit. And like you said, the coverage on the site's just been fantastic. I'm not even referring to myself. I mean, everyone else just phenomenal. The preview stuff, even the game stuff that's already up this week for the 2 games this Saturday. So yeah, I think NFL is going to be the way we're going to be going next up.
Once again, make sure you check out Aram's work over at BangTheBook.com and follow him on Twitter at ChemicalAT. Aram, appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Adam.
There you go. There's Aram Tolegian. Again, BangTheBook.com writer, and once again, at ChemicalAT on Twitter.